Recording. I did not touch the page. I want to record that clearly because I'm not entirely sure why I didn't. Maren Sols said, "Don't touch it yet," and I stopped. My hand was already moving toward the inventory page, toward the redacted name, toward whatever the device had locked onto. And I stopped because she said to stop, and I am still not sure whether that was the right decision or just a reflex. I stopped. The device kept its tone. The redacted line sat there on the table between all three of us, and nobody touched it for a long time. Hannah asked Maren what she meant. Not confrontationally, just the question. Maren said, "The device is reading a contact signature, not a name. What's under the redaction isn't text anymore. It's a trace. If you touch the page before you know whose trace it is, you will feel it and you will not be able to unfeel it." I asked her how she knew that. She said, "Because I touched something I shouldn't have once, before I understood what the device was reading." She looked at the inventory page and then away from it. It takes a long time to separate out afterward. That is the most she has said at one time since she arrived. She said it without drama, factual, the way you describe a procedural error. Then she went back to the chart table and did not say anything else for the rest of the evening. The chart room was very quiet after that. I'm trying to record the quality of that quiet accurately because it was not ordinary. The Morwenna moves on her mooring constantly. Small adjustments, the hull flexing against the tide, the kind of ambient motion you stop noticing after 2 days aboard. That stopped. Or I stopped noticing it because something else was louder. Except louder is the wrong word. More present. The device tone, the inventory page, the three of us around the table, not touching anything. There was a smell I have noted before in archive-adjacent spaces. Mineral, faintly cold, the way stone smells in a room that has been sealed for a long time. It was stronger last night than I have experienced it outside an actual node site. I do not know what that means. I am recording it because I noticed it, and the series rule I have applied since the beginning is record what you notice and let the significance arrive later. Hannah moved to the porthole and looked out at the channel for a while. Not dramatically, just standing at the glass. When she came back to the table, she did not look at the inventory page. She looked at the device. She said, quietly, to no one in particular, "It's still holding." It was. I am recording this the following morning. The inventory page is still on the table. I have not touched it. The device is still active, still pointing in the same direction, still holding the same tone, although it has dropped slightly in what I can only describe as intensity. Still present, not urgent the way it was last night. The objective today is not the redacted name. I'm setting that aside until I understand more about what Maren means by contact signature and until I have more context for whose name might have been there. What I am doing today is the watch number 1 photograph. I have been carrying it since the accumulation site, and I have not examined it properly, which is a habit I need to stop having. 2 keys I carried for 2 years without examining. Now a photograph I have had since the headland. The pattern is not flattering. The watch number 1 photograph is not on standard photographic paper. I noticed this when I first handled it at the accumulation site, but I did not record the observation properly. And now that I have it under the chart room light, I want to describe the material carefully. It is thicker than photographic paper, not by much, a few tenths of a millimeter at most, but the difference is immediate when you hold it. The surface has a very slight give that paper does not have. Not flexible, not pliable, but not rigid either. When I hold it at an angle to the light, the edges are marginally translucent, the kind of translucency that suggests the material has some depth to it, like very thin stone rather than a flat surface. The same quality I noticed in the pre-registry proto-catalog card from the accumulation site. Not the same object, different dimensions, different surface texture, but the same category of material, which means the photograph was not made with standard photographic process. Whatever process produced this image used the same base material as the pre-registry catalog system, the archive's oldest record format. I tell Hannah this. She comes over and holds the photograph, tilts it the same way I did. She says, "The image is inside the material, not printed on the surface." She is right. Looking closely, and I have the magnifying loupe from Hannah's chart kit, the image does not sit on top of the surface the way a photographic print does. It is within the material. The depth of the image varies across the surface, as if different elements of the photograph are suspended at different levels inside the substrate. The watch face is clearest and appears deepest. The background details are closer to the surface and slightly less resolved. This is not a photograph. It is a record. The same way the founding document in the Lantern Tower was a record. Information preserved in a non-degrading material designed to outlast paper, outlast standard photographic emulsion, outlast anything that time and moisture would normally consume. Someone made a permanent record of watch number 1. Before the archive's catalog system existed, using the same material the pre-registry system used. The watch in the image is a pocket watch. That much was clear from the first examination. What I want to look at now is the detail. Under the loupe, the case is worn, not damaged, worn, the way objects wear when they are handled constantly over a long period. The high points of the case are smooth where the metal has been rubbed by repeated contact. The engraving on the case is partially obscured by this wear, but visible. The loupe resolves it clearly enough. A crescent mark on the outer case, different from the crescent marks on the node sequence steps. Those are architectural, functional marks. This one is smaller, more personal, the way you would engrave something you intended to carry. Below the crescent, a number. The same position as the number 2 on my watch. The watch I have carried since Season 1, the one that came from the unknown figure during the power outage at 47 Marginal Road. The number on watch number 1 is 1. I have known this in principle, the brief, the accumulation site record, everything that led to this photograph describes watch number 1 as the first receipt. But seeing the number under the loupe is different from knowing it. There was a watch number 1. Someone wore it. Someone had it long enough that the case wore smooth in the places a hand would hold it. The engraving is older than my watch, older than the archive's numbering system, older than the system that should have issued it. It was not issued. It arrived. The same way the blinking device arrived at 47 Marginal Road on its own. The same way my key was simply there without an origin entry in O'Connor's journals. The first receipt was not given. It was found. I moved the loupe to the background of the image. This is where I should have started. Not the watch, the background. The watch is the subject of the record, but the background is what was present when the record was made. And backgrounds are where the archive hides what it did not intend to include. The background of the watch number 1 image is partially resolved. The material's depth of field effect means the foreground watch is sharp and the background is slightly soft. But the loupe compensates. I can see enough. A surface, stone, I think. The texture is consistent with the kind of rough coastal stone I have been around for the past 2 investigations. Not dressed stone, not architectural. Natural formation, possibly a cliff face or a large outcropping. The watch is being held against this surface or resting on it or displayed against it for the purpose of this record. In the upper left corner of the background, at the very edge of the image's resolution, a mark on the stone. Not a crescent, not parallel lines, not any symbol from the node sequence vocabulary I know, but I have seen this shape before. I have seen it recently enough that my hand stopped moving when the loupe resolved it. It is the same mark that appears on the inner shaft of the second key. The title shelf symbol. The one that told us the key did not originate with the archive. The one stamped into the brass at the foundry, or before the foundry, or by whoever made the key before the archive existed to catalog it. The same symbol is on the stone in the background of the Watch 1 photograph, which means the watch was recorded at the title shelf, or at a site that uses the same symbol system, which means watch number 1 and the second key share an origin point that predates everything we have documented about the archive network. I write this down 3 times because I want to make sure I am recording it correctly and not collapsing 2 separate observations into one. The symbol on the second key's inner shaft appears in the background of the watch number 1 photograph. Both objects carry marks from the title shelf symbol system. Both predate the archive. Hannah is reading over my shoulder. She does not say anything for a moment. Then she says, "The title shelf is not the origin. It is the reference point. Something older used that symbol system, and the title shelf inherited it." She takes the loop from me and goes back to the photograph. She is not looking at the watch now. She is looking at the background stone. She tilts the photograph at a different angle to the light, the way she works chart geometry, finding the plane that resolves the most information. She does this for a long time without speaking. Then she says, "The symbol is cut into the stone at a specific height, not random placement. It is at eye level for someone standing at that surface." She pauses. "And the cut angle is the same as the title shelf marks we documented below the headland. Not similar. The same tool or the same technique or both." I ask her what that means for the location. She says, "It means the record was made at a site that was actively maintained. Someone was cutting those marks regularly enough that the technique stayed consistent. This isn't a single carving from a single visit. It is part of an ongoing system of marking." She sets the photograph down. The title shelf below the accumulation site is one instance of that system. The background of this image is another. They could be the same site at different times, or different sites using the same reference vocabulary. She picks up her nautical chart and traces something on it with one finger without marking it. Her eyes go to the photograph and back to the chart twice. Then she folds the chart and sets it aside, which means she has found something she is not ready to say yet. I think about that. The accumulation site sits above the title shelf. The primary grid is oriented around it. The archive inherited its oldest vocabulary from those marks. If something older used those symbols first, if there is a system beneath the system we have been investigating, then Watch 1 and the second key are not archive artifacts at all. They are artifacts from whatever the archive grew around. I pick up my own watch, the one I have carried since Season 1. I hold it next to the photograph of watch number 1 and compare them under the loop. Same position for the crescent, same position for the number. The wear pattern on mine is in the same places, the high points of the case, the edges of the bow. We have both been carried, we have both been handled constantly. The difference is degree. The wear on watch number 1 is more advanced, deeper, the kind of wear that takes decades rather than years. Someone carried watch number 1 for a very long time before it was placed in that drawer. I set my watch down and try to remember clearly when I first had it. The power outage at 47 Marginal Road. The unknown figure who placed it on my notes. I have a clear memory of finding it there. What I do not have, and I am only noticing this now, recording it because it is the kind of gap that matters, is a clear memory of the moment before I found it. The moments immediately preceding the discovery are vague in a way the discovery itself is not. I remember the watch on the notes. I do not remember the room being empty before that, which is exactly how the archive erases things. Not the event, the encoding of the event, the moment before, the context, the gap that would allow you to question whether the object was always there. I have been carrying a watch for this entire investigation, and I cannot fully reconstruct how I came to have it. I have assumed the explanation is the unknown figure. I have no actual memory of that figure placing it. I have a memory of the watch existing. That is not the same thing. I write own key, same problem. No entry in O'Connor's journals for when the key entered the investigation. My memory of finding it is clear. The moment before finding it is not. Pattern consistent with archive encoding erasure. I do not follow that thought further right now, because following it leads somewhere I'm not equipped to address today. I note it, I move on. I am still at the chart table when the key moves. Not dramatically, not in a way I can be certain about. But I have the second key on the table next to the photograph. I took it out to compare the title shelf stamp directly against the background image. And while I am writing the observation about the shared symbol, the key shifts. A fraction. Not enough to fall. Not enough that Hannah, who is 2 feet away, notices it. But I have been in this investigation long enough to know the difference between a ship moving on its mooring and an object deciding to do something. I put my hand flat on the table next to the key without touching it. The device tone changes. Not direction. The direction is still toward the inventory page across the table. The tone itself. A second frequency underneath the primary one, very low, almost below hearing. The way a room sounds when something large is vibrating at the edge of perception. I look at the key, the device, the photograph. The second frequency is coming from the key. I reach for the recorder to make sure it is still running, and something in my jacket pocket, my jacket hanging on the back of the chair, not on my body, something in the pocket moves against the fabric. My key, the one I have carried since episode 7. The one that has been in that pocket for the entirety of this investigation. It is moving toward the second key through the fabric of the jacket.